Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. I've thought about doing something of this sort for a while, and I seem to have a little window of opportunity. That is something approaching a shelf tour. Now, I keep my books in this Besta unit here. The other day, I had made some kind of comment. I was searching for a book and couldn't find it, and it might have been the one that I'm hunting for now. I can't remember. And somebody said, "Oh, you must have such a massive library to have trouble finding a book like that." Well, it is massive enough, but we have space constraints here in this apartment. And so I have books in front of books and on top of books. So to give you a setup, each section is divided to distinct subject areas, I guess you could say. So just to the left, we have poetry. Above, this is the shelf I'm going to be tackling, or cupboard I'm going to be tackling. Above this, we have ancient Greece. And so below that, I designated for art and science. I figured there's sort of a connection there. Then the next step above here, this would be ancient Rome. And I think below that is where I start bleeding into history. It's not as clear cut as all that. And whenever one of these things gets opened, animals approach from all areas of the apartment to try to get in there, and that may happen. So there is a book that I've been looking for. It loosely fits under the science rubric, although I must say in with science I include such things as psychology, which psychology I don't think would qualify as a science, probably more of an art. So at any rate, I'm going to pull everything out, and I will close off the video before it's time to put stuff back. And you will probably encounter a lot of stuff that I have not read, which is sad. I wish I had a situation with big shelves where I could just see everything that I have, because I tend to forget what I have, and pull something out and look at it as per my whim of the moment. But that is impossible here. So let's see what kind of a view we get here. Why beauty is truth. Okay. So this is what it looks like going in. Now I'm just going to pull everything out, and I will try to arrange them more usably going back. So here's my, Art as an Experience by John Dewey. I've heard things about this, but I don't remember what. I would like to look at it one day. Lewis Mumford, The Highway and the City. Just about everything here by Lewis Mumford I've read, except for his big book about the history of cities or whatever. That's the only, and From the Ground Up. Now, both of these books came from Chandler's Bookshop in Evanston. It was a stationery store or something, and in the basement they had a used bookshop years and years ago, back when I was reading, when I was working up in Evanston. Wonderful, wonderful books. I love Lewis Mumford. So then my Autobiografía of Jose Clemente Orozco. This is the copy I picked up in Guadalajara when I was a lad, probably a teenager, and tried to translate and got pretty far with it. Only within the last, I don't know, decade or so, I realized that there existed a English translation. Back in pre-internet days, it was real hard to figure things out or hard to order books. So I think I looked at this when I got it and pretty much got everything right in the Spanish version that I read as a young lad. Nikola Tesla, don't know much about this book, but it's a Penguin edition. I think it's something of a hodgepodge, but I have not gotten there yet. And Cleopatra's Nose, I know there's something here. I don't remember if I've looked at this or not. Einstein, Out of My Later Years. I've read that many years ago. 7 Steps to a Pain-Free Life, Robin McKenzie. The McKenzie method is very helpful if you stress yourself out or injure your back or your neck. This book focuses on both. You can buy either book separately, but generally you can 2 in 1 for the same price. It's a very useful book to have handy. So I was saying this is kind of art, a history of architectural styles. I'm sure I just picked this up and have not really read it. The Meaning of Relativity. This actually is one that I have not looked at. I think I've glanced at it, but it's too mathematical for my tastes. But perhaps one day. And of course, Ideas and Opinions. Great book. Great book. I love the essay where Einstein proposes world government. So, as I say, I'm getting nervous because I've run into the question of how the heck do I repack everything when I'm hunting for something? Well, this is going to be a complete overhaul, but I will spare you that. Modernism, Peter Gay. I had a number of books by Peter Gay and have read a couple of them. I think I got rid of them though, but I have not read this one. If I were reading now, it looks like it would be pretty straightforward and pretty easy to read. I am at a juncture in my existence where I'm focused on the news. I'm focused on the potential collapse of democracy in America. We have a would-be dictator / autocrat in Donald Trump, tearing apart the fabric of government, much as he has torn apart the fabric of the social compact by any means which he could throughout his life. So I'm focusing on that. I don't know if I will get back to reading. I'm a person for whom reading, while I've always wanted to be a reader, it's never been something I naturally gravitated for as one reaches for a water bottle or something like that. No, it has never been so simple for me. So I've been a reader, but not that dedicated. For the last 3.5 years, I've been pretty dedicated. But this whole political scenario is just disrupting everything with me. And I kind of like Richard Feynman questioned, why should we be doing anything? Why should people be building things when there are people suffering and dying in Hiroshima, or Hiroshima, I guess would be the right way to say that. And similarly, why should I be reading anything when we have ICE kidnapping people? We have a genocide going on in Gaza via the means of famine, famine being a human-induced situation. So I don't know. To me, it seems like the proper order of activities would be eject the fascists, stop the genocide, and then get back to reading. But it may not happen that way. And when it does, I'm surrounded by creatures all over the place who like to spend their time laying around all day. And I am very good with that. I don't think reading is a superior activity to laying around. Euclid's Window, I'm sure I just picked that up somewhere and threw it in there. Now, Orchid Fever by Eric Hansen. I like Eric Hansen. I read a whole number of his books after I had read this one. There is another book out that is kind of similar, talking about orchids. Just love this book. Okay, now let's get to some of these, I guess. Art Students Anatomy. This is an old Dover book. Really, really a marvelous book. When I was younger, I wanted to be an artist, and it really, really is great. It gives you anatomical drawings supplemented by other material. And its basis is these set of drawings done by some Renaissance guy. I forget the name, but these drawings by Albinius, I think. Really, really marvelous stuff. So I know this book pretty well, but it's one of those books that I've never had any use for. Oh, Gay Relationships. This was in the box. I've been meaning to get rid of it. I think the idea is that's kind of psychology. The Artist in New York. I think this is about Orozco, written by a French guy, Jean Charlot. That must be, oh, that's Orozco drawn by Jean Charlot. He was, I think he was a muralist as well, who went from France to Mexico. And I've read this, but I don't remember it. But I'm a big Orozco fan, as you may have guessed. Foundations of Anthropological Theory. Haven't looked at this. It's been well annotated, but not by me. And somehow this bent corner happened because of my awful way of storing things. I should be segregating these into size, because size really matters when it comes to trying to squeeze a lot of books into a small space. Except for something like this. This has to be at the front, because when it's needed, I don't have time to be fussing around. The Hitler Myth. I'm not really all that interested, and I don't think this should be in here, but somehow it found its way in here, so let me see what I can do. Charles Darwin, The Voyage of the Beagle, a nice Penguin copy. I should put all the Penguin-sized books together. MFK Fisher, The Gastronomical Me. I think this is an assortment of columns. I heard great things about her, and I just did not find any of it that interesting, sadly to say. And Hermes' Guide of Souls. I think there's pictures in here. No, that's a different book I'm thinking of. I know that I've looked at it, but I can't remember it right off. And that sounds like it should go with my Greeks above. The Hermes of the classical tradition. Well, I'll put that into a separate pile for review. Okay, good. He's been on my lap. I hurt myself. Actually, my dog careened into me, and my knee is kind of messed up, but it's improving, and it's not as bad as it could have been. I got lucky. So Rockdale, this is another Dover, I think, a very interesting book, just for $2. There was a time when you could find great stuff at half-price books, and so for $2, I would not allow myself to pass it up. And probably outdated by now, but as long as I have the ability to keep this stuff, why not keep it? That's how I feel. You know, there is a truism about how our art objects and whatnot are preserved in private collections as opposed to in museums. Anything in museums is subject to being destroyed. And I feel the same about books as well, especially when you see what the Chicago Public Library does. Anything in a public library is lost. It's lost to the world, just like anything digital is lost to the world. Whereas paper books survive, and it will be probably paper books owned by private individuals that survive. So I feel an obligation to hold on to books if I can. One more set. The Fundamental Concepts of Psychoanalysis. Now, when I was younger, I was more interested in this kind of stuff. I really don't give up any more. So this is the kind of thing I could just easily give up. I'm sure I've glanced at it, but it's not something I've read and not something I probably care to read. Now, on killing, this is supposed to be the important book about killing. And I've looked at it, but so chapter 1, this must be a second book, I don't know, The Full Spectrum of Atrocity. I don't know how much I really need to go into depth on that. And then here we have a documentary history of art, and again, another $2 book from Half Price Books. So, The Man Who Loved Only Numbers, the story of Paul Erdos and the search for mathematical truth. I have not looked at this, but it is the kind of thing that I would be interested in if I get my reading back up to snuff. Now, okay, here we're getting... In some of my other shelves, I have it arranged so I have books placed like this in the front row, 4 across, and then I can pull them out and see what's there. This has been such a mess, I can't see what's there. So let's look at this. Bruce Davidson, this is a photo book, and just some nice photos. I have another one in this same series which is falling apart, and I don't know if we will come across it or not. Oh, here it is, as a matter of fact. Henri Cartier-Bresson, some really good photos in here too. I don't know, I really am not interested in photography that much, honestly. In this world of memes, you begin to realize that photography is probably a lot easier than we would have thought. You had to have the equipment. Although Vivian Maier from the Chicagoland area, originally from France, of course, and then subsequently, I think, to New York, really showed what one individual can do. Lacan, the Absolute Master. This is a genuinely important book. It provides an introduction to Lacan's work in a double sense. In the usual sense of leading the reader into the concepts, argument, terminology, and strategies of a body of work, but also in the sense of tracing Lacan's own itinerary of thought from his earliest publications to his mature work. Well, probably not that interested, honestly. I am sorry to say that. One can't do everything. A Man Without Words. I'm not really sure what this is. A beautiful and meticulous study of a languageless man and of Schaller's patience. So this is in the, it sounds like it's in the Oliver Sacks anecdotal line, and I'm always interested in this kind of thing. You Are Not a Gadget. I think I read this about 10 years ago, and I loved this book. It's where I got the idea from. Before this, I had a blog that was anonymous, and he argues vehemently against the anonymity of one's internet presence. That anonymity allows all kinds of egregious behavior. And so if you're going to be online, you should own up to it. And so that is, and don't get me wrong, there are plenty of legitimate reasons for people to post with a pseudonym or that kind of thing. But in my own case, the choice, he convinced me that it was to be myself. Dulcinea, is this another book of photographs? Oh yeah, okay. Now that's pretty darn nice. I haven't really looked at this one. And then here's a bunch of Mumford. I really like Lewis Mumford. I think he should be in the Library of America. And these I am sure that I have read and cannot remember at all. So Art and Technics, Sticks and Stones. This might be one of his earlier books. The Transformations of Man, The Pentagon of Power. So volume 2 of The Myth of the Machine. And I might, oh, here's volume 1 of The Myth of the Machine, Technics and Human Development. Technics and Civilization. And The Urban Prospect. Let's see what I can remember from this one. Social Complexity and Urban Design. This is exactly the type of stuff I love reading Mumford for. Yesterday's City of Tomorrow. The Highway and the City, so that's some overlap. I'm not sure the relationship between this and the 2 books I showed you at the top of this video. We'll figure it out. Okay. Well, put this up here, I guess. Another Penguin book, Alberti on painting, Renaissance guy. And I've looked at it, but it's not, since I gave up wanting to be an artist, though I could take it up again, maybe I should. And The Emperor of All Maladies. This is one that I want to read, but I hesitate. I don't know what of my medical stuff I still have. Some of it is probably downstairs, but I used to have a lot of Atul Gawande and Jerome, I think, Groupman, and I read a lot of those 2 authors. Gotten away from that since I find I'm dealing with my own medical things all the time. I'm less interested in it as an abstract topic, but I would like to get to this. I think he wrote a book about the gene or something like that, which may be a better place to start, but I can't say. On the Revolutions of the Heavenly Spheres, Nicholas Copernicus, or is it Nikolai Copernicus? And this is just really impossible. Some of you may remember, I'm sure Pete Krabs will remember, that I had started on my Euclid, which is up top, because that's, Euclid has gone out the window along with all other reading. But this is probably beyond me. I have another book in this series, and it should be together with this, but it's not. Oh, here it is down here. Epitome of Copernican Astronomy, Harmonies of the World by Kepler. And I like Kepler quite a bit, but that's based on very little knowledge. So I really would like to get to these one day. So everything is up for grabs as I pull these books out. Now this is Beginnings of Modern Science. Whatever this series was, it looks like a great book. I have not looked at it, though. The Classics Club, The Beginnings of Modern Science. It looks like a really great book, edited with an introduction by Holmes Boynton. Profusely illustrated with woodcuts and engravings. Looks like a great book. You know, why would I want to get rid of any of this? And here you can see I've segregated mass market paperbacks. Oops. Let me finish with this. A Mathematician's Apology. This is a really lovely book. I don't know that he focuses much on the great Indian mathematician Ramanujan, if that's how you say it. It's been a long time since I've read this. I think he does a little bit. I think Hardy may well be more well-known now in conjunction with the Indian mathematician, but a very nice book. He was as interested in the cricket games of the time as any mathematical question. You know the famous story. He showed up at Ramanujan's flat and said, "Oh, I was just in a cab. The number of the cab was not very remarkable, 3562 or something like that." And Ramanujan said, "Oh, no. That is a most remarkable number," and then goes on to tell it. I don't know if that's in here, but I would bet it is, if he deals with Ramanujan at all. Martin Heidegger. I'm sure I've glanced at this at one time or another, but philosophy is really not my thing. I believe he was a Nazi, so. Archimedes and the Fulcrum by Paul Strathern, another $2 book. It looks pretty good. I may have even looked at this, but I mean, look at that, just wonderful stuff. I love reading about the ancient Greek scientists. I love the history of science as a thing. Archaeology, A Brief Introduction by Brian M. Fagan. I don't know if I've read this or not. I don't think I have, but I really ought to with all of the archaeology I've been reading lately. I didn't know I had this. The Early History of Surgery. There's actually a number of books out that are just like this, generally with this kind of picture on the cover. And I haven't read it. Kind of probably a gruesome photograph right there. George Simmel, Conflict and the Web of Group Affiliations. I have no idea. 2 major essays on the dynamics of social organization by the great German philosopher and social theorist. So probably well worth delving into or diving into, but no sense of that or why I haven't. 20th Century Music and Introduction by Eric Salzman. Looks good. Something I would like to get to. I have in the Library America editions both of the Virgil Thompson books, which the Library of America has. The Enjoyment of Mathematics. You see this book around a lot, and I think I've looked at it, but I can't say that I've really read it in detail. I get kind of put off by that kind of thing. Marc Chagall, I'm sure that I've read this my life. I can't remember it. I really don't care that much about the biographies of anybody unless I'm really drawn to that person for some reason. So I've read biographies of, say, T.S. Eliot or Wilfred Owen. Human Being and Citizen, Essays on Virtue, Freedom, and the Common Good. I'm not sure, again, how much I need to read this kind of stuff. I mean, what is the line by Brecht? Until you feed us, right and wrong can wait. Well, until you stop the genocide, Essays on Virtue, Freedom, and the Common Good can wait. The Artist as Thinker, from Shakespeare to Joyce. I have no idea why I have this. I rarely come into this section. You can see the row of boxes in front just are one more impediment to getting in here. Now, see, I'm putting these on top of my penguin pile, so the real sorting will have to come at a different time. Now, here's all these mass market paperbacks. Now, This Is Music is probably kind of shallow for anybody now, but I read it when I was very young and loved it when I was trying to get my feet wet in the world of classical music. Basically, his main thesis is that though people write about music as though it were telling a story, this passage describes the anger at something or the joy or blah. Music doesn't really do that. Any music lover who has been intimidated by pretentious reviews or jacket notes will find David Randolph's book a reassuring, refreshing guide to music. What it is, what it can do, and how you can enjoy it most. I think that's a very good description. So let me not lose track of my perplexing puzzles and tantalizing teasers. A book that I loved as a kid, just really great. It's got all kind. What do you think? There once was a racehorse that won great fame. What do you think was the horse's name? It has the smell of the years, but this is really fun. So how can the boy get the ball out of the hole in the ground? That kind of thing. Really great stuff. Now, when I was a lad, I took the bus. I mean, I'm sure I was a teenager to Mexico, and I sat next to a young woman who I fell in love with immediately, wrote a poem about, which no longer, well, no, I think it may actually exist. So, but she was reading The Medusa and the Snail, and I always remembered the title and was curious about it. Some time ago, both of these books by Lewis Thomas showed up in a neighborhood box, and I picked them up. Of course, I had seen this stuff in a much bigger, I think like a trade paperback somewhere, and did not spend the money on it, but for free in a little box. And maybe one day I will read this. Of course, I would have to read The Lives of a Cell first. Would like to know what she was reading. There's a booktuber that I follow who has read Lewis Thomas and spoken very highly of it, and I can't remember the booktuber's name because I've really slowed down on my booktube watching, but he's a guy who starts every video with smoking something. The Immense Journey by Lauren Isley. I would assume I've read this or read some of it. Man, I'll probably have to get rid of this. Carl Sagan, The Dragons of Eden. Now, I've wanted to read Carl Sagan, and I don't know what I have interspersed here and there. Freud, Sexuality, and the Psychology of Love. Of course, I've read that because of the sexuality connection. I'm not really that big into Freud, honestly, or any of that ilk. The Geography of World Atlas by Juan Cole, I think, or no, J.P. Cole. What is his first name? I don't know why I'm saying Juan. Well, I'm not going to worry about it. Very bad. Very bad. I once took an allergy test, and I'm allergic to 3 things: dogs, cats, and dust. Well, I think mold probably is, or whatever this problem is. It was not always this way. I would just pick up any Pelican original that I found, and I have read some of this. It was pretty useful, but I did not. I was looking for something in particular one day, and I read a little bit of it. And Porcelain Through the Ages. This was only $1. I mean, how could you pass up something like that? And I'm sure at the time that I picked it up, I was not that interested in porcelain. And honestly, this European kind of porcelain is probably not where my interest would go anyhow, but toward, say, Chinese porcelain. I should say that when it comes to art or science, my categories here, I say this is for art and science, but if it's Asian art or Asian science, it may well wind up in my Asia partition, just because space considerations and stuff like that. So that's another factor which can go into my not finding something. So even like where I keep my novels, an Asian novel may well be over in the Asia section as well. Well, let me go. The City in History, I think Mumford is really well known for this. Beautiful copy, but it's the one that I have not read. What is this? Oh, it's just what I paid for it. Well, less than $5 for this, and I would guess that there was no shipping involved, and it says like new. Well, not after sitting in here all these time. Oh, God. Frank Lloyd Wright and Lewis Mumford. I've read this, and you would have expected it to be of more interest. It wasn't. And just came across this somewhere. Yeah. Thanks, dear Frank Lloyd Wright. Thanks for your brave and beautiful manifesto. It adds to my treasures. When do the lectures come off? I know more than one youngster in New York who'd like to make a pilgrimage to Princeton to hear you. You know, just the trivia of a life. And that's another thing that I try to do, if I can, is say, I have a smaller Mumford book, put it in front of a large stack in the back. So I think this is all together. I'm not sure. I have an arm problem here too, which makes it hard to pull things out. The condition of man, the conduct of life, and the culture of cities. I really would like to do a deep dive back into Mumford. Mumford is from way back in my reading history. And then the complete letters of Sigmund Freud and Wilhelm Fleiss. I think Fleiss was that surgeon. Just really weird shit. I mean, you realize these guys were all nuts. I mean, just crazy shit. I mean, humans can be pretty disgusting. Oliver Sacks, an anthropologist on Mars. Now, most of the Sacks I have read. I love Oliver Sacks, and I think he is one who is kind of dispersed oddly as well, but you will see more directly. Toward a Psychology of Being, Maslow, never read that. Clearance for $1 though, that's not a bad price. See, nowadays I would probably pass up on something that has that in it. Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. I read this. I remember reading this in Taipei, actually. I was in a big Carl Jung kick until I realized that I don't like him very much. And so I got off of that kick and just moved on to other things. But I still think this is a great book. Any autobiography should be like this. He talks about, I looked out the window one day and there was a figure in black walking down the road, and for some reason it terrified me and I ran and hid under the bed. I mean, the real stuff of a life. So there he is in his comfortable life. I think he, like, who was it, the American poet Wallace Stevens, I think he was a bigamist as well, but I don't really care about his personal life, and I don't cast any shade on him for that either. So Geoffrey Moussaieff Masson, The Assault on Truth is a really good book. And then A Dark Science. This is an anthology. So I've read his shit. I think he has one about dogs, and I don't know if I have that, but I have not read that. But an interesting thinker. Priscilla at Evening Reader has a book by somebody who wound up with some kind of scuffle with this guy, some kind of online thing where he accused her and she accused him, and I don't think he came off that well, but just in general, I think I find him to be a very interesting thinker. But it's been a long time. And Civilization and Its Discontents. My first Freud, and probably the indispensable Freud, but I can't remember it that much anymore. Now we're getting into Oliver Sacks. Well, The Man with a Shattered World. We now have a cat with brain damage. This is a story written by a World War I soldier with brain damage. And it's a harrowing tale. So Oliver Sacks was the reason that I read it. And of course, the usual entry point for Oliver Sacks is The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. Great stuff in here, including the story about the president's speech, how all of these people realized that Ronald Reagan, when he was giving his speech, was full of BS, basically, whereas people that were not as people that were more fooled by linguistic tricks were lulled into complacency. But Musicophilia, I don't think I've read this one. The Island of the Colorblind, I've read that. And this one, the Oaxaca Journal, I've read that. Can't remember much. Seeing Voices, I remember quite well. A Journey into the World of the Deaf is really, really a nice book. Uncle Tungsten, I love, and this is a marvelous large print edition. Now, let me see. I don't know if this exists in a newer edition, but if it does, you need to follow it up with Oliver Sacks revisits it with a story of something that he remembers wrong in this memoir of his childhood. Just very interesting. I think this is from the New York Review of Books, something like that. What is this? Oh, this is oh, this I think is the same thing reduced to an easily readable size. Okay, and this is his memoir, The Last Thing. I really want to read this because I like Oliver Sacks so much, and it's been on my list. If I begin reading again, look at that photo. Not bad. Better than he became, I would say. Well, I shouldn't say something like that. No, he became very nice, regardless. But there was an interim stage where he looked kind of goofy, like I should talk, right? So that's one I want to read. And Oliver Sacks, The Mind's Eye, and I would guess that I've read this. It was only $3, but have not done. We've had 100 years of psychotherapy. This is Michael Ventura with James Hillman. I think James Hillman was pretty well known in his day. I've read this. I did not care for it. It's not something of particular interest to me, but maybe I should revisit it. Woo! So this top part is empty. So we're getting there. Aaron Copland, Music and Imagination. I think I have another book by him. I'm not really that much of a fan of Aaron Copland's music. And this is Elementary Particles and the Law of Physics, the 1986 Dirac Memorial Lectures, Richard Feynman and Steven Weinberg. I like Richard Feynman, so I'm not sure if I've looked at this. It was, again, probably beyond my reach, but I do like Richard Feynman. So, Tapestries for the Queen of Denmark. Let's see. Bjorn Nogard's History of Denmark at Christianborg Palace, woven at Manufactures Nationales de Gobelin de Beauvais. I never look at these. I find that art is not really served that well by a book, but this serves as a memory. I have not read a lot about art, but I have the fortune of having seen an awful lot of art in person. So this is just kind of a placeholder for that. I'll just leave it up here lest it get damaged. The Physical World of the Greeks, and I put this crease in it for $2, and I think it has a companion book right here. The Physical World of Late Antiquity, and I found both of those for $2. So pretty good. And I think these are supposed to be pretty good, but I haven't gotten there yet. And you know, it's good to have these options available, and it would be best to have these options available on shelves where they are easily accessible so that you know what you have and can pull something out. I would I would like to have that kind of situation, but I don't. Possibly another section in the basement can be taken over and reclaimed for that, like particularly if I get rid of my old PC, which no longer can be connected to anything. Norman Foster, he did, this is the Berlin, what is it, the Reichstag, he built the dome. He, when, what was it, Notre Dame Cathedral had the fire and lost its roof, he proposed a really good solution for it, and they opted instead to try to recreate what was there initially. I think his suggestion would have been just masterful. I think he did some Apple building, and he did something with the library in New York. I love his stuff. I love most especially that bridge that he built. It's in France on the road to Spain. I can't remember offhand the Millau, over the Millau Viaduct. It was at the time the world's tallest bridge. Just a beautiful thing. And when we went to France years ago, it had just opened up, and I read about it, and I said, the only one thing that I insist upon on this trip is I want to see that bridge. And so you would drive over it, and then you'd go back and you'd drive on the ground below and see where the sheep and whatnot are. And there's a little center there. It's probably changed since then, but really a memorable experience for both of us to have driven across that bridge. Just really great stuff. So I'm not really sure where to put this stuff. Thorvaldsen's museum, just another memento. You see his stuff all over and you recognize it immediately. Picasso by Gertrude Stein. I've probably read this, but don't remember much. Looks kind of like The Shadow, if you know what I mean. Well, why don't I just put these art kind of books up here? Now, what is this? The Swing Era, Gunther Schuller. I went through a whole Swing Era phase where I was just listening to CD after CD and wanted to read up more about it, and got the book, and then what happened? The urge passed, but I think it is supposed to be the go-to book for the Swing Era, so I would like to get there. 28 Artists and Two Saints. I've read this. I like Joan Acosella very much, but oddly, none of this is very memorable. She has a real good piece about translations of Dante, probably at the New Yorker that you could Google. Order, Chaos, Order, just another thing that I picked up for $2 and have not looked at it or given any thought to. The transition from classical to quantum physics might be interesting. My favorite number book, which I was showing on this channel and broke the spine of. I would love it in a hardback, but it's too expensive, and I'm well served with this. Number 1, 2, 3, and it goes all the way up to number 20, I think. Really a beautiful book. Norman Lebrecht. I read an article by him once. He may even still be writing, that just left its impression on me forever, talking about the three tenors and the way the status for musicians was changing in the world as it became less and less feasible for artists to make a living in this economy. And I probably have read it. Oh, look at this, something about Riccardo Muti. Now this I would have pulled out before I had heard anything of Riccardo Muti. My partner and I have become big fans of Muti in the last 10 years. He comes back at the end of the season generally now. There he is. But I don't know what I've read of this or not. A starving population and an absentee aristocracy. I've read a lot of his columns online, but I don't know what I've read from this book. And another Schuler, that the same guy? Yeah, early jazz. So of course you can't see that. Early jazz. So of course I picked up another book, and then the interest waned. I moved on to something else. So, but I still have it, and I would still like to do it. Now, a friend on Facebook, back in the day when I was on Facebook, recommended this book extremely, and so I decided to buy it because I, at least if I have the book, it's kind of a placeholder, and I can get back to it. I have not gotten back to it. Compassion Knows No Boundaries, Médecins Sans Frontières, and what is this other one? Oh, I have a zillion of these. It looks like a really, really great history, I guess. Just haven't gotten there yet. Hans Kung, Freud and the Problem of God. Have not read this, and there's no sticker on it. My partner probably peeled it off. It was probably another $2 book. I've heard good things about Hans Kung, but I'm not, as I say, I'm not enamored of Freud or Jung or any of that ilk. So why should I read about them? And in fact, I used to have so many books of Jung, and I got rid of them all and saved these four because I thought, well, I might want to go back to these. I read these, and I read all of the other ones that I had. I had a stack. I mean, probably from, well, you probably can't tell, but probably if you stacked them on the ground, they'd come up to here. And I read them all. And then, as I say, I at some point I think I saw through Carl Jung and decided that was that. Well, what am I doing now? I don't know what I'm doing now. So the objective, as I say, is to replace everything. This will go pretty well. Well, I've got books on top here again. Okay. Akamaka. So I have a lot of Henry Petroski. I've read everything that I have by him. All really great stuff. He died not that long ago. Really, really marvelous stuff. Including, you'll probably come across it, he has a book about books. And he talks about the closet library that John Frederick Nims of Chicago fame, he used to edit Poetry Magazine, that he had in his Chicago apartment. I've talked about him before. He was never my teacher. And then the Richard Feynman books. I've read these. I really enjoyed him. But now 6 Easy Pieces, I think I may have read, but did not get much out of it. And The Meaning of It All, I don't know if I've read or not. So both of those, if I don't know whether I've read something, that's a sign that I could use a reread. And if I get back to reading one day, and maybe I will. So it really is a prodigious library when you consider what it contains. I mean, I don't think you could do better than this for scientific books. The unlikely story of how scientists, mathematicians, and philosophers proved Einstein's spookiest theory, entanglement. I don't know. Another one I probably picked up for a couple of books. And then Malthus, an essay on the principle of popularity. I've heard he's an awful writer, but it would be worth. When I was a kid, my sister studied some of this stuff in high school, I believe, and she explained it to me, and I thought it was real interesting. I managed to go through school without getting much of an education. Now this is a very nice book about Japanese ceramics, and I've read some of it. Well, I don't know. I had it with me on vacation somewhere and was reading it, but then I lost interest. And look at this thing. This is in the book. You don't see this kind of thing much. It's really marvelous. And so, I mean, I am much more likely to go to this book and pick it up again rather than was it, did I say Pelican? Yeah, than that Pelican book. Double Fold, I used to have this in a hardbound also. I love this book. Other people don't, but just talking about how everything digital is lost and how things on paper survive. And this is a real good example. And unfortunately, we live in a world where there are terrible people that take books and cut them up and use them for prints on their walls and stuff. Okay. Another Pelican, Mies van der Rohe. Have not looked at this. When I studied art, I was in the art and architecture department at University of Illinois Chicago Circle, and that program came out of the Bauhaus tradition, and I would have been very interested in stuff like this. I mean, and I think. Well, regardless, I'm not going to give you a long pause and more of this guy. I create a selection. Do I need to? Probably not. Essays on Music in the Western World by Oliver Strunk. Have not looked at this. It looks like it would be good. To San Who Loves Music, Christmas 1974. Very nice. Essays on Music in the Western World. Foreword by Lewis Lockwood. Well, one day perhaps, and if not, I understand that one can have aspirations, and I think the quality of one's aspirations count for something. The achievement is not so vital. Whether you attain your goal or not is really not that important. And the cloisters, if you've been to New York City, I think this is included on your entry to the Metropolitan. So one ticket buys you entrance into both places. And I think even they may let you in on a second day because you have to travel some distance to see that. This, of course, was a $1 clearance book. And Victorian Architecture, another Pelican. We're winding it down here, folks. And The Courage to be Disliked. This is, I think, based on Adler, the psychologist or psychiatrist, Alfred Adler. Using the theories of Alfred Adler, one of the three giants of 19th century psychology, alongside Freud and Jung, this book follows an illuminating dialogue between a philosopher and a young man. It's very readable, and I think of the three, I think I would prefer Adler to either of the other two giants. But I don't know, he's the one I have read least. I've read even beyond what I have here. I've read a fair amount of Freud because he was my first avenue into psychology. The long and short of it is, when I was young, I thought that there was something wrong with me, and my parents were not interested in hiring a psychiatrist or psychologist or whatever. They thought that was nonsense. So I never got seen. So I did the next best thing. I tried reading Freud and I tried reading Jung. And it's like the skin of an onion or whatever. You keep peeling and you get deeper and you get deeper. And ultimately, I think what I came to was not that there was something wrong with me, so much as there is something wrong in the world, in a world in which, say, for example, a Holocaust, a genocide in Gaza is permitted and is broadcast, and we all know about it, and we see it on our phones every single day, and it just continues, and it continues, and it is not stopping. So there is a tendency to want to turn all of the world problems, particularly the problems of the global economic system, and make people think that there's something wrong with themselves. That is not always the case. Oh, did I leave off on my mass markets? Well, let's get back. William James, Psychology. I read his book on religions and really liked it at the time, but I think I probably could not stand it if were I to go back. And Bronislaw Malinowski. Now, I didn't even realize that I had this, so that is good to know. In one of my plays, I did a play about the trial of Jomo Kenyatta, who studied under Malinowski, I think, and Kenyatta makes a statement, something about Malinowski, and refers to him as though he were living, but he would not be living at the time that the trial took place. So it's just one of those errors that creeps in when one tries to write a historical play. Now, that's the only historical play that I ever did somewhat successfully. The Future of an Illusion by Sigmund Freud. I would bet that I've read this, but can't remember it now. And Conrad Lawrence, King Solomon's Ring. I have not looked at this. Beautiful shape. Erich Fromm, Man for Himself, An Inquiry into the Psychology of Ethics. Once again, I don't know. The Divided Self. But if you were interested in this sphere, you couldn't do better than some of these books that I've got, I have to say. Now this, I don't think I admire anyone more than a man, or I suppose a woman, but I haven't met one of those, who is real handy with knots. I mean, I would bet that Steve Donahue is handy with knots, although I've never heard him talk about it. Just such a great skill, a skill that I wish I had, and have been too lazy to go about. And this book, I bet, would tell you how to do it. There's a lot of knot books, and there's, I'm sure, a lot of YouTube videos. It just, with opportunity cost, as one moves down the road, you're constantly forced to make a choice of this or that. So, for example, I made the choice to write that book against fascism in honoring my muse foremost, and then secondarily because I'm concerned about the political situation in my country. But then there was a host of other things that I had to let go in order to do that. And that unfortunately is the way of life. But marvelous, marvelous. Okay, now we're back to the back row. Rocks and minerals. Anything. Is this a DK? Oh, this is not. This looks like it's copying a DK book. Anything by DK is wonderful. Well, this is Knopf, and they're cheating. They're pretending to be DK, but not a bad job of it. I like looking at rocks. Let me just put it up here. For Your Neck, a self-help manual. Well, I would believe that I probably picked this up due to some lived experience and have held on to it. Stretching. This has been considered the great book about stretching. I've never used it, but I've held on to it. You can find it all over the place. Darwin, Among the Machines. I have not looked at this, but George B. Dyson, I think he's pretty well known. As remarkable an intellectual history as any I have read. And if Oliver Sacks says so, his words hold a lot of weight with me. Man. Dogs Never Lie About Love. Oh, that is by Jeffrey Mosef Masson, and I've never read it. This is the kind of book I would ask for Steve Donahue's opinion before I delved into it, I guess, at this point. Love, the Master Emotion of Dogs. He actually worked at the Sigmund Freud library, and he had access to all this material and just grew to realize sort of all the goofiness that went on behind the scenes. The theory is one thing, and the assault on truth? It's really worth looking at, and you will never look at Freudian theory the same way again. Okay, more Petrosky. Beyond Engineering. I just love everything he did. He wrote. The book on the book shelf. Okay, I see how that is. I thought that was a separate sticker. Great. The Paperboy Confession. This was a memoir, so probably, to me, the least interesting of his books. Okay, Alexander Technique. This is what I was looking for and could not find. I recently hurt my knee when my dog plowed into me, toppled me over, and so I canceled my Alexander Technique session. Nothing has helped me more than sessions in the Alexander Technique in my life. It's kind of like a therapy. If you were to use Oliver Sacks' terminology, you could say it's a method of making you become more aware of proprioception. That's just me. I have never read this book. I'm not interested in what Alexander wrote. What was his first name? F. Matthias Alexander. I've heard that he was a racist, and I always think of him when people on BookTube particularly, oh, do you read something by somebody who did something bad in their life or was a bad person, blah, blah. And I realized in my life, I guess if one is talking about entertainment and supporting entertainment, that question comes into play. But if you're reading for reasons like you're in a bad spot and you need help, then you don't care what the story is. You know, kind of along the old saying, if somebody saves you from a tiger, you don't care if they were a racist or if they were a wife beater. You just don't care at that moment. So this is the book. This is the reason I'm going in here, because I did some Alexander sessions before COVID came, and the single best thing I've ever done in my life as far as dealing with my back problems, you become more aware of how you are carrying yourself. And then recently I decided that I needed a touch-up, and I bought a package of 4 sessions. I did the first 3, and in the third one I had that light bulb of enlightenment go off, and I learned something that is something I can work with now for the next 5 years. I feel bad for Alexander practitioners because unlike medicine keeps you going back and keeps you going back every month if they figure they have a live one. The Alexander Technique actually works for the problems it addresses, and then you don't need to go back. The whole point is to train the subject into an understanding to where it can be self enacted, I guess you would say. This is not something I would recommend reading through theory, just as Tai Chi. You can't study Tai Chi by reading a book. Now, if you have a good teacher, a good Tai Chi teacher, then that's a good start. And then theory can help. In my case, I studied Tai Chi when I was younger and had real problems with it ultimately, and problems I could not diagnose, I couldn't put my finger on, and no Tai Chi master was going to correct for me because they were much more deeply ingrained than that, and it was actually Alexander that has pointed me the way to that. So, I mean, if you're a normal, perfectly healthy person, et cetera, you probably don't need the Alexander technique, but if you have certain issues, it's very good, but again, you would need a practitioner more than a book. It is like a finger pointing to the moon. Well, okay, more answer to Job. And The Essential Jung. I had this when I was young. This was probably the first thing I read, along with Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. But as I say, I went on and I read everything else. Mr. Wilson's Cabinet of Wonders for $2. Haven't looked at it. More Richard Feynman. What do you care what other people think? And I'm sure I've read this. There's that movie Oppenheimer did not dwell on Richard Feynman, but there is a brief cut to him playing on his bongo drums, remaking the world. The wonderful book. Just love this book. And it was only $4 at half price book. Now, where did I put the rest of him? Well, I like to keep things together to some degree, regardless of the size. Great Bridge Builders and the Spanning of America, and this, he goes into a lot of these. Oh my, look at this, the Kinzua Viaduct as it looked in the late 19th century. I wonder if he has something about the Tay Bridge disaster in here. I just love this stuff. Contemporary photograph taken after the arches of the St. Louis Bridge became self-supporting. Bridge building is just such a fascinating thing. Oh, I think it was the other book that talked about the bridge collapses. And Calatrava's bridge is, just great stuff. The Evolution of Useful Things. I think this was his big bestseller. And the book nobody read, Chasing the Revolutions of Nicholas Copernicus. Now, I haven't read that either. Some people really hate this kind of cover, It would be good, but I have other priorities. Okay, these all look like Norton's. An Essay on the Principle of Population. So I guess I have this in duplicate. This probably would be the one to keep. Darwin, some kind of a selection. Well, I'm not going to. The Double Helix, I really want to read this. I've seen the play about the woman who was there and necessary to providing the right image, I think. And I've read the introduction, and I think it talks about her. I forget her name, but well, regardless. And Newton. Who knew Newton was here? And of course, I haven't read that. It was only $3. There was a time when any Norton Critical Edition I would just pick up as well. Proust was a neuroscientist. Have not looked at that. $2. Yep, expected. Demonic Males, Apes and the Origins of Human Violence. It sounds very interesting. I think I've probably looked at some of this. I love this stuff. The book by Other Minds about cephalopods. That author, Peter something, goes into great detail about the tree, the family tree of creatures on Earth. Very, very interesting stuff, and I recommend it. Now, some of those books I think are downstairs, so you won't see them here. I have certain, like any big art book is all in one box downstairs where I can never look at them. Whoops, more on top. Don't want to. Art, Clive Bell, and Origin of Species. And I've read half of this. I'm going to guess that this is where I've stopped. Art, Clive Bell, I haven't read. One thinks, of course, of the Bronte sisters. And Empires of Time, have not looked at this. I'm going to guess that this was another $2 purchase or whatever, and my partner took the tag off. And then last, don't know how I wound up with this. This is a Norton hardback box set with the 4 great books of Charles Darwin. What a marvelous thing here. And I would like to get there, but I think I should finish Origin of Species first, don't you? So this is my shelf, and this is why things are so problematic over at this address. I've gone on for almost an hour and a half, so I should cut it off. This is a glimpse into the hellscape which is my bookish world. Thank you for stopping by my channel.